Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the halfway point on Correspondent Week. And closing off our content for this Wednesday is our Europa Conference League champion. No one else will ever sing that. It's our West Ham United correspondent, Chris Stone. How are you, Chris?
I'm feeling good. I'm good, mate. You?
Yeah, good, mate. Congratulations on a first trophy in 43 years. Are you old enough to remember 1980?
I am. Yes, exactly. Too well.
This is where you
That's
tell me
it. Just
you weren't there at Wembley when Brookings scored, were you?
no, no, not that old. Thanks.
I didn't think you were. Just wanted to
No,
check. How was it for you, mate? You didn't go out to Prague, did you?
no, I didn't go out there. I'm in an army, and the closer it got, sort of, I was itching to go. I never had a ticket, but so just like a lot of people, watching it in a pub with other sort of unknown and known West Ham supporters. So yeah, it was good. It was surreal. I mean, I guess it sunk in that we've won it, but even when they scored the goal, it's just everything about the whole experience was so un West Ham like, because probably Sid just said, scoring in the last minute, all of that sort of stuff, and he just had that feeling in it that because of Liverpool, what happened when we were playing well there in the FA Cup years ago, and Gerrard pops up and scored. You thought, well, the referee's playing all this added minutes on top of the what I thought it would be, and you thought he's just almost waiting for them to score, and you thought they're going to score, and they didn't, and it was like, hold on a minute, we've won. So it was like sort of celebration, but also shock.
I tell you what was really impressive was that they were a ball dominant team, and actually third best for possession stats in Serie A last season, Fiorentina. And you obviously got the penalty, which was right, but it also felt on the occasion quite harsh. I don't think it was intentional. You go in front,
Yeah,
then they obviously get in the ascendancy again. And I'll be honest, when they equalised, I thought they'd go on and win. And the way you played after they equalised was brilliant. You took it right back to them. It was like you got stronger. And then it swung where it felt like, yeah, almost you can get this goal before extra time where the pace will slow down again. But I think Fiorentina got overexcited when they equalised. You deserved it in the end, mate.
yeah, I think we did overall. I mean, I know that there's that incident in the corner and stuff like that, which it didn't take any edge off the win or anything like that, but it added a little bit of sour note in that
Yeah, I'm
respect.
sure you
But
went home and went, oh my God, first trophy in 43 years. Can't believe they were throwing cups. Like, no, you weren't thinking about that, mate.
no. But I mean, when Bowen went through, I wouldn't say I was confident he was going to score, but you were waiting for him to score as opposed to, oh no, it's Antonio, what's going to happen? So and it seemed to be, it was weird. It's like watching it in slow motion. It's like no game I've ever watched ever. I know I wasn't there, but it was like no game. I've never seen or experienced a game like that. I think, there's lots of different factors to that. The fact it's taken us forever to win anything again, and the way we won it and scoring in the last minute, all of that sort of stuff. It's really good. I mean, it's a good experience as a fan. You don't, as well, you don't get many moments like that, and you sort of, I don't know. It still seems slightly surreal, but I just think it's the more you see it, the more you take it all in, and and enjoy it. It was enjoyable. I mean,
No,
it was
I
a
get that. I think
fantastic
like what you're saying about
win.
the slow motion moment, like
Yeah,
every football fan can relate to that moment. Even down the football pyramid, every football fan had that moment. You'd be like, oh my God, it took minutes to go in. And that
yeah,
where he's running through, probably to all of us, in processing in literally a space of a second going, I'm thinking he's going to score here. Whereas for you, you're probably thinking he's taking 10 seconds for him to run through 1-on-1. He's now taking another 10 seconds for the ball to go in, and that's how it feels to you. It's taken so long. I was surprised actually that I wasn't bothered by it. I wouldn't say I was like, as we obviously got a little bit of a rivalry.
yeah,
I wouldn't say I was happy for you, but it wasn't going through I thought before the game, I'd be like, they don't win. They're right trappy if they have a good day. We're massive and all that jazz. But to be honest, I wasn't bothered at all. I thought it was quite nice because the thing is as well, we take the piss about how long it's been, but good. Someone else put their name
yeah.
on a trophy and you had your day. Good luck to
I
you,
think
mate.
when you win a club, whether it obviously West Ham have won something, Leicester when they win the league, it gives everyone else a little bit of hope that hasn't won anything for so long
That's
that
right.
it's possible, and that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? I mean, if you win something every year, it's great, but for most most football fans, they won't have seen their team win anything.
And you're a decent sized football club, right? It'd be similar for Villa fans going into it this year.
Yeah.
We'll be thinking the same, right? And so probably Villa's ambition is not to be winning conference leagues, but it's been, I don't know, 27 or 28 years, I think, for them since they won a trophy. They'll be the same. They're celebrating just the same way. And similarly, you know, Brighton going in Europa League this year, like, because they've never been in Europe before, you don't feel that kind of that English rivalry about it. It's almost like, oh, I hope they do well. There's no animosity towards that.
Exactly that.
Whereas if my team was in the Conference League, you'd be like, oh, I hope they get COVID and they have to cancel a game and they get thrown out. That's my old excuse. That's the positive of the last few months. The negative, which we knew was going to happen in all honesty, is obviously your best player's gone in Declan Rice. How do you feel about it now?
It is gutting. I mean, I don't think it's not so much about necessarily what he did on the pitch as, you know, as a player, in terms of him scoring a goal or him doing this tackle or commanding or anything like that. But I think it's more his stature in the club and what he was being built up to be. It's a massive hole. Because you can't
replace it.
No, you can't. Certain players or people within an organisation or club are irreplaceable, and he is one of those characters. I mean, unfortunately, I think it's left a gaping hole in the club, really, because when you think of when Noble was there was various times, whether it be the Championship or the Premier League, there's always been a few leaders, but I think it's highlighted that there's very few leaders maybe in the team, or certainly leaders that are known to the West Ham fans, because some of them are quite new players. Or the people that would be leaders are players that maybe aren't going to be playing week in, week out. So it's going to be really difficult. I mean, he was brought in not brought in. He became sort of Noble's almost understudy, didn't he? It's almost like Noble was grooming him, if that's the right words. But
no, probably not, mate.
in this day and age, you've got to be careful. But yeah, it might have been something else years ago.
We know what you mean.
But no, he was kind of bringing him sort of through, and I think the fact that he was sort of very much part of the club, the captain, very good relationship with the fans, that bridge between fans and team. He was all part of that. So it was, although, like you say, it was known that he was going to leave. I think it left a little bit of a bitter taste for some people, I think, going to Arsenal. And I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I think it was that his reasons for going was he wanted to win something. That's not to say that he's not going to win anything at Arsenal, but he's got a much better chance of winning something at Arsenal than he would further forward with West Ham. No one's going to argue about that. But yeah, he'll win FA Cups, he'll win League Cups. Winning the league and winning the Champions League aren't easy tasks when you've got the likes of City and obviously the Champions League.
Everyone, all the correspondents this way, I tell you what, right on the wind up with Arsenal. Really? Everyone's trying to piss Arsenal off. Yeah, Adam's going to come back fighting come Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's no dig at Arsenal at all whatsoever. I think it's more that he was saying he wants to leave to better his career. Okay, he's gone to a bigger club, so he's done that bit. But it was more as to win things. So you rather we'd have gone to like a City. I understand why he wouldn't go there, or maybe even someone like United. Although, they're maybe further forward at the moment of where Arsenal are in terms of winning something. Obviously, Arsenal come close last year with the league, so theoretically Arsenal were further forward than United. But it's just that pedigree or that kind of going to that sort of club. And I think it's just the fact it's another London club.
I get that. But I also get the suspicion with him that he probably wanted to stay in London. Tottenham was obviously never going to be on the table. We long joked for years that we thought we'd go to Chelsea. Their circumstance changed. I think particularly with his mate Mason Mount leaving there as well as part of the reason we always thought that he'd probably end up there. So now he's gone to Arsenal in a weird way, even though they're my enemy. I kind of look at it and I think, if he'd gone to City, he's just another name. Whereas actually, he can potentially be interested to see what Adam thinks. He can potentially recreate that feeling at Arsenal that he did at yours, in the sense that it wouldn't surprise me if Declan Rice was Arsenal captain.
Sorry, James, I just lost audio for a sec. Sorry, mate.
I'll keep talking. It wouldn't surprise me if Declan Rice became Arsenal captain in a couple of years. Anyway, moving on. He's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to spend any of the money you got?
That is the perennial question. I mean, they're doing the same as they do every year, West Ham. They make these silly offers which aren't going to get accepted. There's a lot of there's something going on in the background, and it doesn't seem quite right. Obviously, you got Sullivan and the boards kind of doing their thing. You've got a new sporting director who's come in, who's he's got a good reputation. So that's a good step forward. And then you've got Moyes, and then apparently they've got this voting committee which involves Noble and I think someone else on any player transfers. The problem we've got is that you've got Moyes, who's just won the Europa Conference. He's got 1 year left in his contract. It's almost like a back him or sack him kind of scenario, because
surely you don't sack him now. And I know a lot of yours would have called for him to go in sort of January and stuff.
No, but it's more from the perspective of, okay, if you're not, because Moyes obviously wants players with Premier League experience. He doesn't want young up and coming European players who may or may not be good now or in the future. So he wants kind of a more established players with Premier League experience, which, to be honest, I think there's merit in that. I think we need 2 or 3 of those. And some of the players we've been linked with so far probably be Moyes' targets, like Ward-Prowse, even Maguire, McTominay, Gallagher. They're probably targets which Moyes has shown interest in. I just don't know what's going on in the background, because you would think that in a normal circumstance you would probably give him an extension on his contract, wouldn't you? If you had ambition to keep Moyes there for longer. Why would you only go into this season with a year left on a contract? It's then difficult for Moyes, because if he's only there for a year, maybe he doesn't want to sign another contract. Maybe he's just going to see it out. I know with Sullivan, I don't know, but the assumption is with Sullivan is that he just does, he'd run the contract down, let that play out, and then just probably decide from there whether likelihood is they'd probably renew his contract. But if they had to get rid of him, they'd have to pay not a lot of money, about 7 million, apparently, I've heard. It would be crazy to get rid of him. And I think it would send out it would be a bad thing in terms of what sort of message does that send out to a future manager? You just sack someone who's won you the conference. We're not Chelsea.
It's ruthless business now, though, mate. And I think what I would say about David Moyes, unfortunately, falls into a category, and he's better than this, but he does fall into a category where essentially, other than the Manchester United job, he's gone into places to fix problems. He's gone into yours twice to fix problems. Now, once he fixed it the second time round, you obviously had the brilliant season where you were even in contention to finish in the top 4, right? And now he's gone through where it went backwards, and a lot of people want him to go. The football, in terms of brand of quality, is not perhaps up to many West Ham fans' taste. Now he's gone and won the trophy. Trophy's great. Be honest. If you'd have lost to AZ Alkmaar in the semi-final, you had a crap football season. If that's how it had ended. Fair? Yes. So I can understand why those questions are still there.
I think some of the questions, there's questions against him a little bit. He deserves that opportunity at the very least. But I just think there's a very unclear message in the background within the club of what's going on. That all the parts aren't working together, which I know does happen in a lot of clubs. And I think that relationship with the board and the fans isn't great anyway. It doesn't help situations, but it's just very confusing. But I think, to be fair, this is our usual transfer window. We're linked with loads of people, and then in the last week of the transfer window, we're signing about 4 players who we probably
everyone knows you've got that money, so
that's the problem as well.
I mean, in terms of profile player, like I said, you can't really replace Rice. You're saying Moyes wants Premier League experience. Someone like James Ward-Prowse just falls into an obvious category where we know there's interest. But as mentioned on one of the other pods this week, I think with Dan on the Liverpool pod, like Southampton have give valuation to players and have told the players if valuations are met, you can go. And if they're not, you're staying. That seems to be their viewpoint. So you're going to have to come up with whatever Southampton deem him at. And I imagine that's going to be quite expensive for someone like James Ward-Prowse. You're probably going to blow comfortably 50% of the Rice money if you end up getting.
I mean, I think they're asking 40, and I think we've offered 25. I think for the moment.
I mean, 25 is a laughable offer, to be totally honest, mate. Like, you're not getting him for that.
I'd be happy paying 35 if I'm honest, because he gives us something we haven't got. He gives us goals from, from free kicks, that kind of thing, which we haven't really got. I know we've got players who can score, but they're not. You don't, with him, he's going to score you 4 or 5 free kick goals, isn't he? Likelihood if you get them in and around the box.
Set pieces as it is, add him to it.
Yeah.
And the delivery spot on every time. I mean, he's one of the best dead ball takers for football in the world. You would be a monster threat from set pieces if you get him in, which I think would maybe make the centre backs appealing further down the line in FPL. It's interesting just thinking back to your point about Rice going off the back of obviously Noble retiring. And obviously your club's been synonymous with the academy and players coming through all the way back to your Billy Bonses and stuff. And I get it's interesting. You don't have that now. Like who are the academy players in the squad now? What would we say? Ben Johnson?
Yeah, we've got Ben Johnson. We've got this guy playing up front around Bama.
Yeah.
He was on the bench.
He's definitely not going to wear the captain's armband though, mate. And neither is Ben Johnson.
No, they're not. They're not in that category. They're not leaders. Not by a long shot. We've had quite. I mean, the youth teams have been doing really well. I mean, the under-18s won. They won. Yeah. They won the league. They won the cup last year. So they've had. But then none of them seem to come through. And the ones that we even signed a few from other clubs. Sort of 21, 22-year-olds, and they've all been either gone out on loan and not done anything. But I think that's the case with a lot of teams, isn't it? Because that's the problem now with Premier League football. It's not about what you can do tomorrow. It's about what you're doing today. You're not going to, as a manager, you're not going to get a job or keep a job because you've got a young player who's going to be good in 2 years' time who you're giving game time to. You're going to keep your job if you do well that season, and that's basically. In very simplistic terms, that's more or less it. So it makes it harder, I think, for a lot of for a lot of clubs.
Is there any word on who will be captain?
The two names that are mentioned are Agard and Souček, and I think Agard. I think he might have captained Morocco. I'm not 100% on that. He's probably the more likely because he's more likely to play. But again, you've got someone who could pick up an injury or two and not play that.
He's also quite new to the club. I mean, essentially, because of the injury he had prior to the World Cup, he's basically been with you since January, right?
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, exactly.
This is new to the club.
Yeah. Souček's obviously his place. I wouldn't say his place is under threat, but he's going to have competition in his position if we sign. Someone to replace Declan Rice. Which you'd hope we would, with Paqueta there, Brunel's there. So if we sign someone else in that centre midfield, if we sign 1 or 2 players in that position, which is possible, not going to sign a direct replacement for Declan Rice, but you might get 2 players doing that job, one purely defensive, one more slightly attacking. So that kind of pushes out Souček potentially either way. So yeah, there's not a lot of options. I mean, the players that you would probably have there are someone like Cresswell, or Bonner even, but they're not going to be playing. And Cresswell is looking for a move. I think he wants to go to Wolves. Apparently, a lot of the old guys do want to go. I mean, Antonio wants to go.
Bradley will be thrilled.
Cresswell on one side, Doherty on the other.
Yeah, he reckons Doherty won't even get in the team. I think you'd say the same about Cresswell, ironically. They're probably a bit short of cover there. They might sell Ray and Nori, for example. Let's get into the FPL then. The big question everyone wants to know: who's starting in goal, mate?
I'd like to know as well.
Oh no, don't bottle it, mate.
No, I would say it's I'd say it's 60-40 at the moment. There hasn't been any. Yeah, with that on balance, if I had someone put a gun to me, I'd say Areola.
Really?
Really, on the basis
I'm really nervous about this. Go on.
on the basis that I think he would have left if he didn't think he had a realistic chance of being or staking a claim to the number one shirt. But then you've got a balance with, okay, what's Fabianski there for? Because he signed a 1-year contract extension. So there's been no clear signal in pre-season because the first few games, Areola wasn't yet back. The first game back was the game against Rennes recently, and they both played 45 minutes. So I think the last friendly will probably be, which is against, I think it's Bayer Leverkusen at the weekend.
Will probably give us the answer.
That will give us a clear indication. If one of them starts and plays 60 or 70 minutes, then that's your answer.
I should jump in and share his views because Suj is absolutely adamant and in no doubt that Fabianski will start in goal. He doesn't even think he just shoots it down. It's not even a conversation. And Suj gets a lot of shit wrong. So I assumed you were going to say similar.
I mean, you've got merits on both because, like I said, why has Fabianski signed another year's contract if he isn't going to play? But then I don't think Areola is going to stick around for another year, not starting.
But then Areola played all the European games. You're in Europe again. So, I mean, Europa can be a slog, right? So if you do really well in that again, let's say you got 13 extra games. He plays the cup games, you do well in them. Let's say you got another 6 or 7. There's 20 games from now. And Flappy does have a habit of getting injured at various points in the season. So there'll probably be a few more in the league as well. And suddenly add that out, and quite quickly they could play an equal number of games.
I think the problem you've got, or problem Areola's got, is that Moyes probably likes Fabianski a little bit better.
I agree with that.
But like you say, he's got a few injuries. He's not old by goalkeeping standards, but he's less quick off his line now than he was a few years ago. Although I think he probably is slightly better in the Premier League. He's got the experience in the Premier League, but again, there's a lot of question marks on both. But I think I would say whoever starts and plays, if one of them starts the first half, plays 10-15 minutes of the second half, then that's going to be your starter. If it's Fabianski, he'll carry on until he's injured.
Did you watch the laughable pre-season friendly against my team, Chris?
I didn't watch it. I was watching. Being a tight ass and didn't want to pay the £5.
So right, mate. Tottenham got my money. I can tell you that Flappy was your best player, mate, by some.
Yeah, I was looking at the updates on it throughout as the game was going on. Yeah, he had a very good game. I mean, to be fair, that game it could have easily been 5 or 6-2 to you.
I'm well aware, mate. I spent most of the game laughing through it, to be honest. It's worth saying you had a much weakened team out, in fairness, as well.
Yeah.
And we're winning for a lot of the games. We were fully entitled to sit back, if you will. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning more to Suj's opinion that I think Areola is a no. And also I think it's a potential problem. So he's in near enough a third of FPL teams at the moment. If he's not going to start, then he might blink and he's probably want to come back to and buy at 3.8 if and when Fabianski gets injured, because he would if there's any other 4.0 starting keeper, then people will move that.
I think if probably comes back to what you were saying about Botman before as well. If you've got high ownership on him and he doesn't play a lot, people are going to get rid of him. So that's you, and you might lose value. I would say I would watch and see the lineup against Leverkusen. That will confirm it.
With that in mind, though, if we think after Saturday that Fabianski is going to play in goal and Areola's backup, does that, because of the fact that Areola could well lose some ownership and therefore some value in future weeks if Fabianski's first choice, would that for you rule out the prospect of just getting both and forgetting about it? Because clearly that's an option, isn't it? Just get both of them for 8.5.
Yeah, that is an option. The only thing I would say is you've got it. It sounds bizarre, and you can people can laugh, but I've ended up with 3 West Ham players in my squad because I know I can see your eyes going.
Because I think that you've been out on the piss since the final, haven't you? You haven't stopped.
But only one of them would be actually starting in my team, and the reason I say this is because you've got the forwards, Mbamba, who is making all the right noises. He's played some minutes in pre-season. Moyes seems to like him, and the things that he's talked about in his interviews, Mbamba, is that about he's being told to do the ugly stuff. That's what he enjoys. A bit what Antonio is doing. He's not Antonio. He's not as strong, but he's good in the air, and he's quick, and he's a striker. He's not a winger or a fullback coming into being a striker. He's not going to start, but again, he's 4.5. So there's not many 4.5 million forwards that you could have on your bench.
Yeah, he's certainly in contention. Yeah.
If someone's injured, he'd come in, he'd get you a point. He might even, against Bournemouth, he might come on for 20 minutes and he might get you a goal even. So, and I think why there's uncertainty on our strikers, our forward line, you've got Ings, Antonio, who was potentially going to Saudi, but I think that's broken down now. So you've got Ings and Scamacca. And Scamacca's been linked with Roma, but I don't think they're going to pay the fee, so he'll probably end up staying. So he's probably going to get 20 or 30 minutes. I think
he does feel reliant on the others, right? So
yes,
if the other 3 all stay, and then he's not getting a look in, is he? He's not going to head of all 3 of them. It sounds like Scamacca would probably maybe like to go back to Italy, and I get the impression Moyes isn't that sold on him, and maybe he wasn't even Moyes' choice to sign in the first place. Antonio, as you said, has been linked to Saudi Arabia. Now, if they both go, then sure, you've got Ings and Mbama, but now you haven't just got 100 million sitting in the bank, you've now probably got 140 million sitting in the bank, and you're probably going to buy someone, aren't you?
We would if both went. That's why I think it wouldn't be a bad thing. It wouldn't be a bad thing to say, Antonio went to Saudi, you got 10 million for him, that kind of thing. I don't think it's going to happen now, but that wouldn't have been a bad solution for everybody, because then that you still have 2 strikers there and you'd have room for him to come in. I'm not professing he's going to be a starting 4.5 million forward. He isn't, but he's going to get minutes off the bench. And if someone gets injured,
if he was sat there just with Ings, and Moyes went, he came out and he said, we're not buying a forward, I'd go, well, we know what Danny Ings is like. At some point, this boy will get a run then. He's perfect. But I just think even if you did lose a couple of them attacking players, you've got the money to spend. You'll go and get someone else. So it doesn't overly appeal to me.
No, I mean, there's merits against it, and I may change my mind. But I think I had Sturridge to start off with, but I think he picked up an injury at Forest.
Sturridge is gone. He's gone to America.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay.
Yeah, gone. You won't even find him in the game. If you're sitting in your team, you can keep him. You won't lose value, but no one else can go and get him. Similar with Ellis Sims, who was at Everton. So you've got the young boy out front in at 4.5. So who's the other 2 West Ham you've got then?
I mean, I put Bowen in as a placeholder for the minute, but again, he might be someone I come back to, depending on what his ownership looks like. If it's a little bit high. But I think
he's going to be low. He's going to go off about 5% owned. It won't be big at all.
I think people have got short memories, and I don't think he's certainly not turned into a bad player. He just had a bad season from an output perspective last year, but then the team did. And I think even quite a few of the pre-season friendlies, he's been playing out wide, but he has been coming in, and a bit like what he did in the Europa in the Europa Conference final, he ended up coming into more of a forward position. And if he's doing that, he's probably not going to get picked up in the same way he was if he was playing out where he was sort of being mainly stuck out wide or wider last year. And therefore, if he's doing that, I think there's a potential he could get back to what his points total was the year before when he was a 200-point player.
Yeah, and listen, if you can get back to that, he'll go into everybody's teams, mate, because the consistency was great. I said this time last year that he was quite unfortunate in the sense there was loads of players at 8 million and he was the only one at 8.5. And that was justified after what he'd shown the year before. And I said last summer that if he'd done that for a Big Six team, he'd be even higher in price. So he was still, even at 8.5, he was massively under consideration for me this time last year. At 7.0 at the moment, he's probably not. And that's not because I think he's overpriced at 7. Of course I don't. And I think it's very fair value. He's not much more for Phil Foden at 0.5 or Kai Havertz with Arsenal's fixture run, for example. There were other options at sort of 7.5-ish. And you've got that cluster at 6.5. Is he better than Mitoma? Is he better than Mbeumo? And he might be, because what we know with Jarrod Bowen is a certain level of consistency that over the course of a season, he'll do certain bits. I mean, it's fair to say. Jarrod Bowen will probably get double figures for goals across the season, but there might be long stretches of not a lot, which we've seen. And the difference with, say, Mitoma and Mbeumo is that fixture list run that you've got, because it's pretty rough. Chelsea at home, Brighton away, Man City at home, Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, and Villa away, all in the first 9. And as we discussed before we started as well, the 2 away fixtures that are quite attractive near the start have their own pitfalls. Bournemouth are going to be very different this year under Alphonse Areola, and we don't know what we're going to get. And the Luton game is going to be their first game at Kenilworth Road. It's going to be hyped up in front of the media, etc. You can already see the banana skin. The other fixture for the record is Sheffield United at home. That's not till game week 7. And that's why his ownership's really low. If West Ham had Brentford's fixtures or Brighton's fixtures, we'd be pushing for him a lot more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be a 4th or 5th midfielder at the start. And like you say, the 4th is you've got Mitoma and you've got Mbeumo at Brentford, and they've got the better fixtures. So yeah, it's a lot of it depends on team setup.
I think at that price at 7 million, if you choose to go with Bowen, which everybody can do, then I think you're making a conscious longer term decision. You're going, I'm going to back Jarrod Bowen, and I think at which point do you go, oh, I'm going to pull out of this? And you can say Chelsea, Brighton look tough fixtures, fine. After the Luton game, it's City at home, Liverpool away. If he's not done anything in that first 4, and then you're looking at them 2 fixtures, you're thinking, don't want any of that. And it just needs one of them at 6.5. It'll be Eze as a different example. Does really well, and I think it becomes a natural sell. And Jarrod Bowen, because of those fixtures, I think has to be a longer term buyer. You're buying, you're buying him for the consistency, which I agree is probably probably more likely than those at 6.5.
Well, you're buying the fact unless he's injured, he's playing pretty much 90 minutes nowadays.
Yep.
So you've got that, and he's a 90-minute player in the sense of he's just as capable of scoring in the 10th minute as he is in the 9th minute, as
Absolutely.
We all know. So yeah, and it's the fixtures which, like you say, is the argument against. If I had him in, if I keep him in, he's probably there for maybe, I'd say 8 games.
And that's okay. And it's also worth saying as well, like once you get to the end of that game week 9 run, Everton, Brentford, Forest, Burnley, Crystal Palace as 5 after, as a group of 5, he's pretty good. Everton, Forest, those fixtures are at home as well. So once you get on the other end of that, again, we keep looking at this. The more we talk about it, we've sort of run about game week 8, 9. There's a few flips of fixtures, Liverpool, Villa, yourselves in there as well, where I think you can gamble on him and it'll be a huge differential, someone like Bowen. And he might be great for that little stretch from sort of game week 9 onwards. Yeah, if you go with him, which you can do, Chris, his talisman potential, he stays in, I think. That's it.
A lot depends on
make the commitment to go with him, I think, and stick with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like with FPL, there's other factors than that, just one player.
Of
Do you
course.
have Trent? Because if you have Trent, then that maybe limits how much you're spending in midfield and all that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, but he's in at the moment. The trouble is, I know that if he scores, say against City or Liverpool or something like that, then I'm gonna want him, and then it's a transfer you're making.
And
So
he's very capable of scoring in those sort of fixtures. It might well be that he's a sort of player that we should look at and not deem him so much on the fixtures as such. But then your record, particularly in away games in some of these big games, isn't great. I mean, you haven't beat, I think, a Big Six team away from home under
no, they've
Moyes,
got a
and I
good
think
record.
Moyes' record goes back to Everton, I think, doesn't it? It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean that's like the main thing is we haven't got to win. He's just got to score, so we can
Yeah,
lose
of
three
course.
one in FPL wise. But yeah, there's more arguments for not having him there is, and it's probably a little bit of a bias. I just have a sneaking suspicion he's be playing slightly differently, and I think maybe he's probably going to be pushing for having not playing as a striker, but but having the opportunity to get in those positions more. And I think because of how he got used a little bit in the Europa Conference in the second half, I think there's an element that maybe Moyes might do that, might revert back to him coming inside a lot more, drifting in, especially again it's the uncertainty with the forwards. But if you haven't got someone else on the pitch, it could be that he becomes the striker in the game.
That he got 15 attacking returns last season. And for 7 million, I think that's perfectly reasonable. The year before, he got 29. If he gets, even if he gets in the middle of that, be in everyone's team when you have a good run of fixtures and that.
Yeah,
So it's
I,
interesting.
I
You
think
don't see him being spoken about at the moment. He's definitely got talisman potential. And just interestingly as well, the other point I think to say, because I think Suj, when he's listening to this, be going, when you're going to ask him, he's even the best West Ham midfield asset. Because I think Suj would be looking at Benrahma at 6,
yeah,
potentially
I know.
works into that structure much better. And we think he's on the pens now, right?
Yeah, I mean he probably will be. I mean he's scored a couple of certainly high pressure situation penalties. So it's I think that he will have more of a role this year, but I don't know for sure because he was always getting dragged off after 70 minutes, 75 minutes, and that kind of thing. And then he'd have a good game, then he'd have a bad game, was to drop him, and then he'd bring him back in. With some of the players leaving or not there, I think he's not got as much competition. Not that he had huge amounts, but I don't know. There's always that doubt in my mind that his minutes could always be taken away at
Did,
any given moment.
did the crowd love him?
Yeah, he's popular. He's
Yeah,
popular. I think they get frustrated with him as same
I get that.
as well. But I think I think they feel a bit not sorry for him, but they feel like there's an element where he's being asked to do stuff that he's just not. It's just not his game, and he's willing to do it and he's willing to try, but he's just not got the capability. He's more of a liability when he's asked to come back and try and defend. He
I hear that.
invariably makes a mistake, and I don't think that's his fault, and I don't think it makes him a bad player at all. I just think it's it's Moyes obviously has a way of playing. He wants certain things from his players, and he doesn't maybe fit that perfect mould as far as Moyes is concerned. But fans do like him. I mean, he's exciting to watch because he takes people on. He does a few tricks and all that kind of stuff. Not ridiculous, but it's the sort of thing which when it comes off, he scores or he does well. People are generally on his side.
Yeah,
They're not on his back.
I think the reason I mention it is that obviously, again, Rice has gone, so the hero's gone, if you will. The fans need something they can put their hat on, and the two clear candidates for it are the two players we're speaking about, right? It's Bowen and Benrahma, and I guess Lucas Paquetá as well. Which,
Yeah.
moving on to him, I think Paquetá versus Benrahma doesn't feel like a conversation. It's probably got to be Benrahma at the same price. But I'm interested in where do you think Paquetá will play this year? Is he going to play as a 10? Or if you don't fix out this Rice replacement, can you see him playing a lot deeper potentially?
Yeah, he could potentially be playing deeper, but although Fornells could fill that position, he's one of those players which I don't think Moyes necessarily knows the best position to play him in, because he's almost perfect position. He's in between that 10 and an 8.
Yeah, I get that.
Because sometimes an 8 he can come a bit deeper, but then as a 10 he can be a little bit further forwards, and he finds it harder getting on the ball, or he hasn't got as much time on the ball. But you definitely want him in a position where he can be attacking, putting people through.
But I think at the moment, without Rice, you miss so much in that midfield area that the easiest way in terms of your squad profile at the moment is, rather than put Downs in there with Souček, is drop him in deeper. And I just wonder as well, if you mentioned Pablo Fornells, could you see him playing ahead of Paquetá in the 10 position?
Yeah, I could see him playing in a few positions. One of them, the 10. He also can play, if Benrahma goes off, he can step into where Benrahma was.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of, his downfall is he's a little bit of a jack of all trades. He's good in a few positions.
Yeah, I get that. And he works his socks as well, Pablo Fornells.
Yeah. He's a popular player. Fans like him.
Yeah, it feels like he lost a bit of a look in a little bit last year. I think partly because of Benrahma's performances.
Yeah.
Tell you what, if he played regularly, 5.0,
yeah,
I'd be quite interested in that.
I mean, if he was, again, he's another one which has always got the prospect of being dropped, because he's not the first choice. He's the next choice in 2 or 3 positions. But yeah, if he was playing, I don't know, 3 out of every 4 games, he wouldn't be a bad pick.
Yeah, probably needs injuries to develop. I just wonder, as it stands, if Paquetá plays deeper, if he might start at Bournemouth. You get that work. You still get that work ethic in front of him as well, and that in turn also might allow Benrahma and Bowen to get closer to whomever's going to play through the middle.
Yeah, I mean, tactically wise, it's so difficult to know how they're going to fully set up. It's like I say, Rice leaving has ripped a hole in the whole structure of the team. Really, it's not an easy gap to fill.
No, and I think the other thing we have to clarify when we're talking about West Ham and players here for FPL is, I know you haven't bought anyone, but you will. There are definitely going to be additions, and I think there's a consciousness of that will put me off. You know, people like Bowen's place in the team's clearly not under threat, but for many others, there's going to be additions to this squad that might make someone who looks attractive now maybe less attractive. And again, I think that fixture run at the start's pretty tough. Let's do some quick fires before we finish, Chris. If you had to start with one of the 8 4.5 million defenders you have, who'd be the pick?
Based on how he finished the season, and it wouldn't be long term. It'd be Emerson.
Okay.
If Cresswell's leaving, he improved a lot as the season went on.
He played really well in the final.
Yeah. And I think if he's able to replicate that, then he's a threat going forwards, in terms of goals and potential assists. I think we need to be a bit more consistent, I think, on finishing from the set pieces. They've got the threat, like Zuma and Agard have both got the threat from set pieces, but we don't get enough goals considering.
I think just on Emerson, I'd be conscious if, say, in the next week that he did say that Cresswell maybe might look like he was going to go to Wolves, for example, which has been rumoured. I'd think you would buy, again, you're not going to go into the season with one left back.
No.
You'd get another one, I think. Whether that could be a younger understudy or whether someone would come in above him, that would make me nervous about starting him. So I think, for me, the one I'd rely on at the moment is Agard, is an absolute certainty if he's fit. You said he might even take the armband. Zuma, unfortunately, just picks up too many injuries, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Agard is the safest pick in terms of starting. If he's fit, and you'd hope that second half of the season he missed a couple of games. Once he got back in and established himself fitness wise after January, he's going to play, and he's potentially the captain by default at the moment.
Yeah, who do you think will start up front?
I'd say probably Ings.
Interesting. Certain guarantee on the tin at 6 million. You'll get goals.
They get chances. And if he's playing, you'd like to think he's gonna score. He's got a good pedigree. I think with Antonio, he hasn't started any. He hasn't been involved in any of the pre-season games. Hasn't even been on the bench. Skamaka's still just working his way back.
Is that partly though down to, and I know most players who played in the Gold Cup are already back with their clubs, but with Antonio's historical injury record, that maybe he'll get eased back in. Could it be the case?
It could be. I mean, it could be that they actually thought he was going to leave. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's going to be potentially a couple of weeks. I mean, it'd be a surprise to some degree if he was suddenly starting or something, in the friendly at the weekend. But he hasn't been on the bench so far, so that seems odd to me.
Yeah, that'd be pretty off-putting. Okay, final one. Where do you think you finish?
Anywhere from 9th down to about 15th. But I'll go for 10th.
I will go for 11th. Would you have any concerns about potentially being involved in a scrap again?
I'd be stupid or naive to say no, but I don't honestly believe we will be.
No, I think you'll be all right.
I think Moyes has almost got something to prove, as daft as that sounds. Whether that's because he's not going to be there after another year, or whatever the reason, I think he'll want to do well in the Premier League, or he'll want to do better.
Yeah, look, while your best players are fit, I think that's be a challenge. And I say 11th at the moment, but if you invest well, then you're the most likely to break into the pack further up the table, I think. But I think Brentford got a little bit more depth than you at the moment. Like I said, that could certainly change by the end of the window. I would think Chris will finish 10th or 11th. That would be my feeling at the moment. Brilliant, mate. Thank you so much. Anything you want to plug before you go, mate?
No, I think we've covered it all, I think. So it's all good.
You can follow Chris on the app formerly known as the Bird app on FPL_Sky Addict, as per link in bio. Thank you very much, Chris. What have I got next? Fulham, Dara Curran. He's on next, kicking off our Thursday on Correspondent Week. Just sees me. So thank you so much to Chris. Cue music, please, man child.